We've actually actually working years on the roadmap to develop the roadmap, and it became clearer and clearer that there was a pathway forward, and therefore we decided to transition that investment in offsetting into investments into technologies which will help us directly decarbonise, such as the partnership with Rolls-Royce, such as the direct air carbon capture and storage technology development, such as the software that I talked about on the descent profile optimization with Airbus, the retrofitting of our fleet with that software to drive operational carbon efficiencies right here and now. So that's why we have pivoted away from offsetting and into technologies to help us directly decarbonise.
Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. I'm your host, Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simplifying. Every Thursday, I have important conversations with top aviation executives, technology entrepreneurs, and policymakers helping aviation take climate action. Conversations that help separate the signal from the noise. Whether you are a frequent flyer or an airline executive, if you care about sustainability or simply love traveling, welcome aboard. Jane Ashton heads up sustainability at easyJet. She has great experience in turning the UK leading low-cost airline into a visionary when it comes to sustainability initiatives, from working on a hydrogen aircraft with Airbus to being one of the first airlines to 100% offset its carbon footprint even before the pandemic. Now, these policies are now getting revised, and Jane and I speak in depth about what is it going to take to get one of the largest and fastest growing low-cost airlines in Europe to get to net zero. Jane, it is fantastic to be speaking with you again about easyJet's net zero journey. I remember shortly after we last met, you had published your net zero roadmap with targets validated by SBTi. I think you were one of the first airlines to do so. I wonder if you could start by you giving us an overview of how easyJet is getting to net zero.
Yes, of course. Well, the first thing to say is that there is no proverbial silver bullet. There are a number of levers that we have to work on to deliver net zero by 2050. And they comprise, in the first instance, operational efficiencies. We're absolutely forensically focused on reducing carbon and driving fuel efficiency. So a number of operational procedures and efficiencies which are very, very closely managed, anything from single engine taxiing to removing any piece of extraneous weight off the aircraft to engine washes, and a whole detailed suite. We're just currently retrofitting, for instance, the whole of our fleet with descent profile optimization software in conjunction with Airbus, and that alone is going to drive further carbon efficiencies of over 1% within the sort of 6 to 9 months that's yet to take. So big focus on operational efficiencies. Fleet renewal is a key lever. And we already have a relatively young fleet, a number of A320, A321 NEOs within the fleet, but we will be entering into service an additional 168 NEO aircraft between now and 2029. So that's going to be a big element of carbon reduction between now and the end of the decade. Airspace modernisation is another immediate issue, which could, if implemented across the UK and the EU, result in at least 10% carbon efficiency for aviation across Europe. So it's on paper a low-hanging fruit, although it's been difficult to realise in the years to date. But we're definitely working hard to support and influence the bodies that will actually help make that a reality, and that's a key part of our roadmap, as well as over the next 10 to 15 years. And of course, sustainable aviation fuels. We will be flying on sustainable aviation fuel. We already are actually in France at the moment, but from 2025 we anticipate both EU and UK SAF mandates, which we will of course be abiding by. But in the longer term, from 2035, 2040 onwards, we are very optimistic that hydrogen propulsion will form an increasing part of our roadmap to net zero, as that technology, infrastructure, green hydrogen production, and logistics scale for the the narrow-bodied aircraft sector, which would be a considerable contribution to net zero aviation by 2050. And for the residual emissions, which we will still be emitting carbon emissions by 2050, then technical carbon removal is what we have in the plan as well, and we're working with various partners to work to scale that technology. So primarily 1.5 Carbon Engineering, Airbus, and a number of other airlines have collaborated together to seek to scale that technology over the next few years. So those, in a nutshell, are the 6 elements or levers which enable us to reach a science-based target decarbonisation trajectory over the next 30 years.
There's so much to drill down in there. I think we can spend the next few hours talking through it, because you've probably spent many months developing this. One thing that is different from other SBTI verified airline roadmaps we have come across is your bet on next generation aircraft being bigger than your bet on sustainable aviation fuel. Are you able to dig into that, exactly why that is the case?
Yes, I mean, I must stress that sustainable aviation fuels are very much part of our roadmap, and will continue to be right through to 2050. But from 2035, 2040 onwards, we would expect to be taking hydrogen fueled aircraft into the fleet, and we're certainly working with a range of partners to try to make that a reality. Certainly, it's not just easyJet that is very optimistic about that. Certainly, other bodies, be it on the EU front or on the UK government front, with regard to the ATI work, the Fly Zero work that's been done on that front, is confident that hydrogen propulsion aircraft will be feasible for the short haul market. So we know that it's not a near term or even a medium term solution for long haul, but certainly for easyJet, where our average sector length is around about 1,200 kilometres, we have confidence that this could be a solution for us to help us decarbonise. And of course, some of the advantages of hydrogen is that it really is truly zero carbon emissions. So as opposed to SAF, which is of course sequestering carbon during its life cycle, but still emitting carbon in the air. So hydrogen is ultimately would be a much cleaner solution for the narrow-bodied airline segment.
Very good point here. I'm curious. You are working with Rolls-Royce, I believe, in developing the hydrogen aircraft. What is this partnership about? What is the time frame you're looking at? When will I get to fly, let's say, from Gatwick to Geneva or Luton to Geneva on a hydrogen aircraft, or Luton to Paris?
Yes, I think what's unique about the partnership with Rolls-Royce is that the hydrogen combustion engine technology that we are collaborating on is engine technology capable of powering an easyJet-sized aircraft. That means that we're addressing the narrow-bodied aircraft segment. And over the next few years, you'll see a series of rig and ground tests. You'll have already seen the tests that were carried out towards the end of last year. You'll be seeing and hearing of more iterations of testing, and ultimately, we'd be looking to take that to air, but there's still a lot of work to do in the meantime. Meanwhile, you might have seen actually today the news from Cranfield that they're looking to take and commercialise a much smaller aircraft, 9-seater, based on hydrogen fuel cell. But that's very encouraging to see, and we've got a very close partnership with Cranfield, working on a number of hydrogen-related projects. So great to see that news today.
That's fantastic. So, does this mean this will give you two options in working with Rolls-Royce and Cranfield, or will this tie in well together with your work with Rolls-Royce?
Yeah, no, this all ties in together with the ultimate ambition. We have a number of partnerships with, obviously, with Airbus. We've been working with them since 2019 on next generation aircraft technology, and very closely on the Zero E partnership as well. As you know, Airbus have uh, stated that they envisage bringing a commercial hydrogen propulsion aircraft to market by 2035. So we have that partnership, partnering also, as you say, with Rolls-Royce, with Cranfield Aerospace Solutions, and also with GKN on hydrogen-related aviation projects.
So, paint for me a picture for someone who doesn't know in depth as much as you do. Let's say it's 2045. Where can I fly on easyJet? So, if will you say if I'm flying from London to Amsterdam, it might be a Rolls-Royce powered, hydrogen jet. If I'm flying to Egypt to Sharm el Sheikh, I might be on a SAF flight. If I'm flying somewhere else, I might be on zero. Which routes will the specific aircraft be flying on?
Well, it's not possible to say exactly at the moment, but be assured that these are very live conversations with ourselves, and particularly working with Airbus on the modelling, and our network team to look at the types of city pairs where we might start operating hydrogen. Of course, that depends very much on the availability of green hydrogen and on the infrastructure at the airports, which is something that we are working on as well at the moment, and so is Airbus very actively, actually. And we've been working, for instance, with Hydrogen Southwest and Bristol Airport, and Airbus as well, on a consortium to look to see how hydrogen can be introduced at Bristol Airport. First of all, in terms of ground equipment, so that we can start to understand how to work with hydrogen, what types of rules and regulations and processes will need to be developed and aware of. So it's all very much work in progress. I can't tell you right now where you'll be able to fly in 20 years plus on hydrogen, but potential routes are being talked about right now.
Fair enough. I'll give you that. It's hard to look into this crystal ball here. You also have an interesting partnership with Wright Electric, where you're developing electric and hybrid electric aircraft with them. Is that still current? And if so, how far off is Wright Electric in terms of test flights, potentially with easyJet as well?
Yeah, so we were collaborating a number of years ago quite closely with Wright Electric. They're eyeing up all electric flights of um, yeah, around about 500 kilometers. I think with regard to easyJet size aircraft and the challenges of narrow bodied aviation, all electric has become clearer and clearer that it's not a solution for us. Having said that, Wright Electric is in the business of developing high power electric motors. So this could be part of a hybrid hydrogen solution in the future. But all electric, we are quite clear now, is not an option for an easyJet size aircraft or airline.
Good to know on how that's progressing as well. So it seems a lot more hydrogen, perhaps a little less electric. I remember when we last spoke, you were still automatically offsetting flights, 100% of them. In fact, I think it was since 2019, you were one of the first airlines to automatically offset flights. Now, in this roadmap, you've stated that you will no longer be doing so. Why is that? Can you please explain? You were at an industry leading position with offsetting, you're moving away from it. Why is that?
Yes, of course. So when we launched the 100% offsetting back in 2019, we did so saying and knowing that it was the most immediate thing that we could do to address the carbon impact of our organisation. I think it's phenomenal looking back 3.5 years, how technologies have developed and opportunities have developed to support the decarbonisation of aviation. I think it's happened incredibly quickly and it's very exciting. We always said it was an interim step whilst those pathways became clearer. And you're right when you said you must have been working months on your roadmap. We've actually we're actually working years on the roadmap to develop the roadmap, and it became clearer and clearer that there was a pathway forward, and therefore we decided to transition that investment in offsetting into investments into technologies which will help us directly decarbonise, such as the partnership with Rolls-Royce, such as the direct air carbon capture and storage technology development, such as the software that I talked about on the descent profile optimization with Airbus, the retrofitting of our fleet with that software to drive operational carbon efficiencies right here and now. So that's why we have pivoted away from offsetting and into technologies to help us directly decarbonize.
Fair enough. And I think that explains your position as well. Now, EasyJet is a low cost airline there, which means you're almost always focused on growth. And there's been significant growth, especially post pandemic. Let's talk about growth versus sustainability. To what extent can an airline such as yourself reconcile the two? Even though per passenger carbon footprint may be going down, the total emissions of the airline is going up because of growth. How do we reconcile this?
Well, certainly, if you look at the modelling, we've modelled our decarbonisation pathway based on an intensity metric, which is as per the SBTI guidelines. But allied to that is also a decarbonisation trajectory. And if you also look at the Sustainable Aviation Roadmap, which was launched, the latest revision was launched last week at Farnborough Sustainable Skies conference, that is actually based on an absolute reduction trajectory. Alongside the intensity reduction, you will see a decarbonisation trajectory in absolute terms, but not as fast, it's fair to say. Certainly the decoupling of growth and carbon emissions is now evident, and there's a way forward on that.
Right, and I think the sooner we can do that, the better it is for the industry as a whole. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad to see that that bet on new technology. Um, Another question I have is more policy related. We've seen how France announced that they're banning flights of less than 2.5 hours. I think where there's a train connection, so a few domestic routes, and at the same time, the UK has announced a reduction in domestic air passenger duty. You, of course, run a number of domestic routes. What do you say to critics who want domestic flights moved onto other forms of transport like trains?
Yes, I mean the legislation in France didn't actually impact on easyJet, even though we are flying domestic routes in France, because generally speaking, any train route that is 3 hours or under is not a viable route for us to fly, and we wouldn't be flying it unless, of course, it crosses sea. So yes, we're not flying super short domestic flights, and nor is there the infrastructure on the rail to reposition um, all those passengers on the longer domestic flights. But yes, under 3 hours is not a viable route for us, and we don't fly it unless, as I say, it's crossing water.
Do you, pardon my ignorance, do you fly currently, let's say, from Luton to Edinburgh or Glasgow?
Yes, yes, we do. Luton to Edinburgh, yeah.
Would that not be a very short route which is covered by trains?
Not within that time scale.
Okay, okay, fair enough. The other part just around policy is also just looking at European level. To what extent will you be impacted by the tightening of the ETS scheme from 2025 2026?
Well, I think generally speaking, in all walks of life, not just aviation, emitting carbon is going to come with higher costs, and that's very much that is one of the drivers um, be, behind the net zero pathway and all the incredible efforts that are going into to decarbonise, because we want to fly as carbon efficiently as possible. It makes sense for the environment, but it also makes sense for the bottom line as well.
What gives you the most hope? Because there are lots of skeptics about aviation's target in about 2050. What gives you the most hope that we will actually get there as an industry?
Well, it's incredibly energizing to be part of the relationships and the partnerships that we're working on with partners such as Rolls-Royce, with partners such as Airbus, Cranfield Aerospace Solutions, GKN, Hydrogen Southwest, the airport partnerships, environmental partnerships that we're developing, the wider coalitions such as Sustainable Aviation and particularly the Jet Zero Council. There is so much momentum behind this. The technologies are becoming clearer and clearer. What we really need is the regulatory infrastructure and incentives to enable those technologies to scale. So yeah, as we've talked about when we talked about the transition from offsetting into decarbonisation technologies, the landscape has changed dramatically over the last few years. And as has the societal expectation that all sectors decarbonise as quickly as possible. So there definitely is that momentum.
Right. Yeah, I totally feel it as well. Every time I'm meeting at an industry forum, yes, there's momentum, there's consensus. And I think that definitely helps. Now, I'm curious to learn about your journey as well. You've actually been in sustainable aviation for over 10 years, I think, since 2002. What led you to sustainability within aviation? What's your journey been like that got you here?
Yeah, my background has been tourism. I was on the commercial side and transitioned into the sustainability side of travel and tourism, tour operating, and I was always obviously very excited about tourism. Could see the massive um, socioeconomic benefits that travel and tourism brings, but alongside that, the environmental challenges. So it was something that I was always very passionate about. So it was great to have the opportunity previously with uh, First Choice Holidays and TUI Group, and now with easyJet, to pursue that uh, professionally and to find ways where sustainable tourism, sustainable aviation, and business success can gel, and that's increasingly the case. So yes, I've worked in different areas to do with leisure tourism, be it hotels, tour operating, ground handling, cruising, but aviation was always the biggest nut to crack, I think, and that's what really attracted me to focusing on aviation and working with easyJet, where I knew, because I'd worked with them previously, that a number of the senior management, well, actually all the senior management, were absolutely passionate about solving this challenge, and that's a real prerequisite, I think, to making progress in sustainable business.
I think it's very inspiring, perhaps to an entire generation of people looking to come into aviation to choose to work with someone like easyJet, which is growing, but wants to do that in a sustainable manner rather than just a traditional legacy airline, for example. The last part of this interview is what I call the rapid fire round, in which we get to know a bit more personally about you. Very simple questions like, what's your favorite airline?
Oh dear.
Something that's not orange.
Definitely easyJet.
All right. I told you it's easy question.
I hope they're all so easy, these
What about your
questions.
favorite city?
London, I'd say, actually.
Okay. Did you grow up in London?
No, not really, but I feel like it's my adopted city.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
Favorite book? Gosh, I like lots of books, lots of authors. I guess I reread the Wolf Hall trilogy recently, so I do like historical fiction. But in terms of sustainability books, recently, I guess There Is No Planet B, Mike Berners-Lee. I would recommend that. That's an inspiring read.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm going to pick it up. I've read the Bill Gates one, but not Planet B, but I did see it come out. I will definitely pick it up. What's your favorite movie?
Oh gosh, movie. I should have done some research, shouldn't I? Movie. Oh, to be honest, I'll swerve that one slightly. In terms of TV series at the moment, I'm really hooked on Succession, so I'll have to leave you with that one for the moment.
Okay, sure. It can be a series. What is something you still want to learn, Jane?
Oh, well, I'm missing using my languages actually a bit at the moment. I used to use them more professionally, so I'm trying to pick up my German again at the moment. So I could speak it pretty well years ago. Looking to reactivate that.
Okay. What do you do in your free time?
Oh, quite a lot of sort of cycling and trekking.
Okay. Any favorite hikes?
I'm just back from the Amalfi Coast, actually. We've just walked along the mountains along the Amalfi Coast, which was
fantastic,
amazing. I definitely recommend that, but go is slightly out of season.
Okay, fantastic. That's a great tip. And finally, the best advice you have received.
A previous boss of mine gave me some advice that stuck with me. That really investing time in your team, supporting and empowering them, but not micromanaging. So letting them shine.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the hallmarks of a truly great leader. Jane, thank you so much for opening up personally as well as your vision for sustainability at easyJet. I think you're doing some fantastic work. And I can't wait to have you featured in the book and write some more details about it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air. Aviation is one of the hardest to decarbonize industries, yet there are multiple paths to get to net zero. Awareness is key to a green future. So please give us your support to help our sustainable aviation insights reach a wider audience. You can do this by sharing this episode on your network, on LinkedIn, Twitter, or even WhatsApp. Or perhaps you might consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this episode. You can start a conversation with us by writing to us at podcast@simplifying, that's simply with an I.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website green.simpliflying.com and join the movement. Sustainability in the Air is an original podcast by Simplifying. The show is produced by Wright in Slovakia. Dirk Singer is our Director of Sustainability, who leads research for each interviewee out of Greenwich, UK. Shubhadeep Pal is our supervising editor based out of Mumbai and Singapore. The articles are written by Ayushi Badola in Dehradun in India and Meera Hull in Montreal, Quebec. Creative design is led by Ligia Esteve in Montreal. Baiba Drimain is the project director for the show based out of Valencia, Spain. Special thanks to Wendy Sim in Singapore. And I'm Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simplifying and your host. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.